Hey Internet friends, I wanted to share a little bit about this plugin called Human that I just discovered from Mixed in Key. It processes the audio stream coming out of your DAW. Each of the instruments is making some sound, and this can process that sound and sort of groove it intelligently. You be the judge about whether or not you think it's intelligent. They're not working on the MIDI itself, and they're not working on audio as a file. And it's going to try to make them groove together, and they all adjust together. And there's different kind of groups of instruments you can choose so that it sort of has an idea of which part it's playing in the mix. All the way from subtle groove. This just becomes a mess. When it's humanized max, it just falls apart. So yeah, let's take a listen. Plugin's on sale for about $25 right now. What I find interesting about it is in the FAQ about it, they talk about the research that went into it. And it says that it's based on research from Harvard University and Max Planck Innovation, and that there are 2 patents, and the technology used isn't available in any other VST plugins or DAWs, which I would say is probably accurate right now. So it feels like musicians slowly getting faster or slower to try to find each other. And it doesn't seem like overly intelligent beyond that, because I don't see it consistently making the bass earlier than the drums, for instance. I've heard that bassists sometimes play a little early to kind of anticipate the downbeat and to be in the pocket by the time the string of their bass guitar starts resonating. It lands when the kick drum is hit or the snare is hit, and it kind of feels in the pocket, but they're actually trying to play a little early. And you'll notice that this is actually later than this. The drums are back earlier than the bass. And so sometimes the bass is early, sometimes the drums are early. So it's not doing one consistent thing all the time. It's just slowly shifting. And I think that there's more of an affinity to old drum machines. Old 909s and 808s are revered because they did have a sense of groove, and it may have been their sort of imperfect clock. Their analog clock that was running internally probably was varying at some level of plus or minus, a few milliseconds. And it probably drifted forward and back, which is what I think that these are doing. Now, I think there's some intelligence about how far each of these should be drifting. It does seem like the drums tend to be a little earlier than other things. Not always, but I tend to find that synth and the piano are later than the drums often. And I find the coloration on the screen from this devoid silver to the warm gold really affects me. So if I'm looking at the screen, I feel like, oh, it's so much better. And I'm very influenced by my visual. So I don't know how much that affects my interpretation of what I'm hearing. And the words also really affect. If I read subtle groove, I'm listening for subtle groove. If I read warm human touch or playful, I'm listening for those things. So that I feel very suggested. And I'm just being vulnerable there. I'm just letting you know, like I feel like these are suggesting to my brain, and then my brain starts making it sound playful in my head. So I haven't done a blind test yet where someone else is able to dial something in and I say, oh, that sounds better, that sounds worse. But I do like what it's doing when I'm looking at the screen and dialing it up. I tend to like somewhere in this organic feel to live session vibe the best for this tempo and these instruments in this song. Subtle groove is cool, but it's a little too subtle, and by the time we get to loose and funky, it might be better for a different piece than this piece. In playful and soulful flavor, actually, I don't mind getting this high, but by the time we get to what's called Carefree Wander, it just feels like it's not useful to me for this piece. It just sounds like I played it in poorly every once in a while, and something that I'd go back and I'd be like, well, let's tighten that up a little bit. And I have zero interest in humanized Max for this piece and these instruments. Not that this is a final piece. Like I said, this is just to test this. I'd be really interested in hearing it for, stringed instruments, wind instruments, and seeing if I had perfectly quantized orchestral pieces, how it would sound. But that's going to have to wait for another video. If you enjoyed this content, I know it was more talking and less music, but I hope I tried to demonstrate what this can do. Go ahead and give a subscribe. I try to see not just what the latest products are, but how they might be used. Are they useful? How could we make use of them? And so, yeah, I hope you have a great day or evening or afternoon. So take care. Bye. So whether you've got a MIDI instrument generating a track or an audio file, which you don't see any audio files here because I'm processing the stream from these plugins, which is happening internally. They're playing chords and things. That's not the important part. The important part is that when I hit spacebar, when I hit play on my digital audio workstation here, these drums and all these other sounds, including this lead line that I wrote for the chords that it generated, are going to come out. And then these plugins here, these human plugins, are going to intercept the audio stream. This is my understanding of it, at least. It's the stream out of the DAW. So if you were to put a reverb in front of this or a pitch shifter in front of this, it would be altering whatever came in the other insert plugins before it. Humanized Max, which actually, it's not a stylized, I think of very humanized rhythmic playing of somebody like Jimi Hendrix, playing notes early or late, or Eddie Van Halen playing sometimes kind of straight eighths and other times kind of swing eighths in the middle of a lick. And, there's drum programmers, like one of my favorite albums is Dwelle's Sketches of a Man, and they have very stylized rhythmic trip, the beats are kind of falling all over the place, but they sort of come together. That's not what this is.